Good morning. Welcome to Tip Off. I always say that, then I realize you could be listening to this at any point in time. But hopefully you grab this in the morning. There's a podcast up for you from late last night with Matt Harpring that hopefully you grab this afternoon and enjoy. We try to put up three different types of podcasts for you. This each morning, 4 or 5 days a week if I can do it, but that's turning out to be tough. A long form podcast for your afternoon drive home or evening sitting at the computer, whatever it might be for you. And then also the highlights from each game generally are supposed to go up each game as well. So that's what we have for you. I've got a ton of stuff today. I don't know if I'm going to get to lock tip-off questions, so let me see if I can get to all of those. Obviously, last night's game, fabulous fight. Uh, Big picture, just that's the team we want to see, and that kind of fight. I phrase the game as a hair puller early because you were pulling your hair out the way they were doing some things. Awesome effort, and then a head scratcher at the end. And I will try to address those three items in combination as we move forward. Remember, social media. Follow me. This is how you do it now, since this is where I live. Locked On Jazz is the site. And then Locked On Sports is on Twitter, Locked On Sports as well on Facebook. David Locke is kind of my Facebook, like where I share life, fun things, what we're doing on the road, things like that, as well as Google Plus. So grab for David Locke. Put up two videos last night for you from the Pacer locker rooms. So I hope you enjoy those. Trying to give you guys a lot of content as we try to build this Locked On Jazz portal into something nobody else has done. All right, let's go around the league first. Huge injuries. Chauncey Billups, Achilles injury, changed the Clippers a great deal, and they are going to they're going to miss him desperately. They were a legitimate. If they ever started to defend, which they had not done, they were a legitimate, real contender in the Western Conference. And I think this is a huge, huge blow to the Clippers. As good as Chris Paul is, as good as Blake is, I just felt Chauncey had an element of calmness to him. A great buffer for Paul, who can be a little tough on some of his teammates, and this is gonna be a huge blow to them. Plus, Chauncey is an incredibly efficient player, good 3-point shooter. Mo Williams is playing out of his mind, and if Mo Williams continues to play like that, it won't be as big issue. But Randy Foye is a huge step back, and I think over time, Mo Williams will revert back to the back of his basketball card. Gallinari's out a month for Denver. That doesn't hurt them as much because they have amazing depth, but it hurts them in just trying to figure out who they are, which is going to be a real problem for the playoffs and their long-term development. I mean, they've decided that their future is Gallinari, Aflalo, and Lawson, and those four guys, and yet they're closing games at time when they don't have all of them on the floor. And therefore, they've got to figure out how to close games and get Gallinari on the floor. So that's where that injury hurts them. Steve Nash last night, tip of the hat, another huge night, 38th birthday. He hits the game winner. You know, he's never been as good a defensive player as Stockton, but what he's doing at 38 is, I think, generally surpassing what John did. That's going to be, I know for a Utah Jazz fan, we never want to discuss this, but that's going to be an interesting debate when it's over. Nash's resume is going to be every bit as good as John's. Now, it's hard for us to ever think that somebody could be as good as John, but Steve's going to turn out to finish his career as a more offensive player. I know John probably could have been, but Steve is. Steve's got the two MVPs, which John doesn't have. Neither has going to end with a title. It's interesting. That's going to and Nash is probably playing at a higher level later. They both had similar starts to how their career started. OKC Warrior game, from everything I've read, was incredible. And a note on Jeremy Lin. In the New York Times this morning, Jeremy Lin, the story by Howard Beck on Jeremy Lin's rise, which is a good one, is the number one most read story on the New York Times today. Think about that, because the New York Times might be the single most read newspaper in the world. Probably some Chinese daily is, but At least in America, I'm certain it is. It might be in the world, and it's certainly a place where everybody across the world comes on the internet to get their news. And Jeremy Lin is the single most read story on the New York Times. I got an interesting text yesterday from a scout that said, "Did you watch how New York used Lin? That's how Jimmer can succeed." Thought that was an interesting comparison. That is how Jimmer can succeed. And Jimmer's playing a little bit better. He got back in the rotation the last two games. I haven't seen the numbers, but I read just quickly about Sacramento's game, and it sounds as though he was pretty integral in their comeback, which is good to see. He was on the floor with Marcus Thornton this time, which is a little different. They're going to have to get Jimmer time, they're going to have to go to three-guard lineups and things of that nature. Isaiah Thomas has been getting a lot of those minutes. Jimmer's going to get him. But the idea that just Jeremy Lin came down, had the ball in his hand every minute, high pick and roll every minute, that was the way in which to use Jimmer. So those are a bunch of notes around the league. Let's go to the game last night. Remember, podcast with Matt Harpering up. Hope you enjoy it. We kind of had a few debates. Matt was mad at me afterwards because he said I didn't debate enough. I just interviewed him. So we'll try to fix that along the way. I'll have a PKI coming up for you today as well. Make sure you guys tell me what you like, what you don't. I mean, you got to keep the feed. There's no other mechanism right now for me to get the feedback back to you, so I need you guys to tell me that. All right, let's start with the opening part of the night. Really pull your head out. Or pull your hair out. Well, maybe pull your head out too. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. The bigs were terrible defensively. Roy Hibbert was just getting the ball deep on Al Jefferson every possession, as though Al was playing defense in roller skates. It was one of those nights, which I have been hoping go away for Al Jefferson. This was a regression night. And I thought at points the Jazz looked a little fatigued or a little off, and I thought every single one of our players had almost regressed to their natural instinct, which is what we're trying to get rid of early in the game. Josh Howard was suddenly jacking shots, and really quickly, and C.J. Miles was, and Al was playing no defense but scoring on the other side, and ball was going into Al, and the rest of the team was standing still and looked completely disinterested. And there was terrible body language by some of the players. It was a disturbing stretch there to watch. It was, in my opinion, a huge regression, almost back to where we were last year. Ron Boone mentioned it. There were guys with hands on their hips and heads down and frustrated they weren't seeing the ball, and a lot of things of that nature that made you get very concerned of where things were heading. And then I don't know what happened. Down 11 at the half, then down 21, 71-50. Obviously, you go to the bench. Indiana lets the off the accelerator a little bit, I'd guess, but the Jazz just kind of very methodically over 12 minutes just blasted them. A really incredible run. I think it was 31-10. And you just saw some great things again. Cantor has now defended 3 All-Stars in all likelihood in the last 2 weeks in the post terrifically. Aldridge, Bynum, and I think Hibbert will probably make the Eastern Conference All-Star team. And Cantor caused all of them significant problems. They're 7-1. They get the ball down low. They're going to score every now and then. They basically have scored rarely. Hibbert's only scored. He took about 17 steps to score on Cantor. The guard line of Howard and Miles were on the floor. Howard got in the lane a few times, did some things. Though I will tell you, I would like to see those guys, in my mind, I would like to see them be playing better than they are for Alec Burks to be getting 3 straight DNPs. That's a hard call because Ty's trying to win right now. And that's what Ty wants to do. And I think those guys do give us a better chance to win right now. Alec just still needs to learn how to play. I was talking to a GM yesterday who talked about when they scouted Alec Burks, that when he has the ball, his talent is so unbelievable, but he just has no understanding of how to play off the ball, either offensively or defensively. And that was one of their concerns, and that they were a little concerned as well. This is a GM that was floating around that area. I don't believe they got a chance to pick him. I don't think they passed him. I'd have to look. But so he definitely scouted him a lot. That his on-ball talent with the ball talent is fabulous. That defensively, when he had to on the ball, he was okay. That off the ball, uh, he was really didn't have much of an idea, and that playing with teammates wasn't a strength, or playing kind of off the ball wasn't a strength. And their feeling on Burks was he was really going to be a few years away in understanding the game and how to play, and you had to understand that. And that's probably where the Jazz are right now with Burks and why he's not playing. But I would like CJ and Josh to be playing better than they are, to be taking those minutes from Burks. I'm sure Ty would too. Um, and in other words, but that's a fine line because you're playing these close games, and I think Burks is going to hurt you 2 or 3 points a game, just where he gets hit on the back cut or he doesn't run a cut or doesn't finish fast break. But Josh really regressed in that first half. He spotted up on a on a fast break instead of running through. He didn't run after a ball. I mean, there were just plays. There were 3 or 4 plays in that first part of the game where guys weren't taking the step toward a pass, so then you're not forcing a foul. And those kind of just maybe fatigue back end of back to back. I don't want to make excuses, but just they regressed. And if Burks is not going to play, I'd like those guys to play a little bit better than they did. Gordon Hayward had a very good third quarter. He continued to defend Granger well, and then we get into debate. Did he, talking to Pacer people afterwards, they felt Granger just didn't play. So did Granger not play, or did Gordon knock him out of his game? Is a worthwhile discussion. Gordon has continued to guard everybody as well. I mean, how about that? That Hayward and Cantor becoming two of our better defensive players along with Raja. But the important thing is the fight came back, and that was a heck of a run to take the lead. We talked about it all night, though. You got to play from ahead, and when you play from behind, those are tough moments, and you're tired, and it's more exhausting in the fact that they had to play from behind the night before and had to play from behind um, last night. You're exerting more energy than you would otherwise, and so you just have to find a way to prevent that. I think the first quarter we've been outscored now. I think 7 straight first quarters, maybe 6 straight. So you've got to find a way to prevent that from taking place and playing better in that regard. Then there's the 5-minute mark. There's those substitutions, and when we've got a team that's got 12 guys that play about the same level, maybe 11. They'll throw Jamal in there. He wasn't there last night, but you're going to have these nights. Ty hit on a bunch early in the year. Last night he might have missed, but there's some, and I think it's clear it didn't work. But so why did he do it? And remember, as we go to timeout, the play before we go to timeout at the 5-minute mark, Pacers get a fast break off a make by the Jazz where our guys don't run down the floor. And Ty may have wanted to take it longer, but our guys were gassed at that point. Now, you get that 2-minute timeout. I thought he called the 2-minute timeout to see if he could then bring them back and see if they could get him another 2 or 3 minutes of time. Instead, he made the decision to pull that unit and get those guys out there who have some familiarity and have the experience late in games. Al was awful. He was 0 for 3 with a turnover on 4 straight possessions that really altered the game. Now, this is a guy who last year was number 1 or 2 in the league in field goal percentage in those circumstances. He's one of the few guys who can usually get that shot off, and he makes that shot. But last night he did not. So, some point over the last year and a half, Al's been as good as anybody in the NBA in those circumstances. I agree. It felt like, at the time the substitutions were made, you're like, let's see. And then you kind of look at the big picture. Okay, so Al failed. Well, Al usually doesn't fail in those circumstances. If Al has a strength, frankly, that's been it. That's been where he's been the best. Millsap hits a shot, but then also, again, late, puts the ball on the floor in traffic. The three-point shooters are not potent enough, so the floor gets small, and I think it's now 6 attempts for Paul late in the game where he's put the ball on the floor, and he has it's turned out he's, I think, gotten 1 shot off in those 6 attempts. It's clear where he's, this is just not a one-on-one basketball team. And you have to be able to move the ball and find some things. I loved, by the way, back to the stretch, I loved where the Jazz started giving the ball to Millsap more. And they ended up with just crisp ball movement. Something's got to be done to give Millsap more touches. Paul's not a go-to guy, but he's probably our best guy, and he's got to get more touches. Right now, too often the ball's going to Jefferson. Teams aren't double teaming because they're not scared of Al shooting 46%. So then it's too hard for Al to get it out because there's nowhere to go. And if the cuts aren't made perfectly and there's not enough ball movement, and Millsap then loses interest in the game a little bit without those touches. I don't know what the answer is. The one thing I continually have been talking about at tip-off is altering the big rotation, not having Favors and Cantor play together. Use some of their strength rebounding-wise to play with the other guy and let the other guy get touches. It's frankly where we started the year. This is what Ty wanted to do to start the year, was have Millsap come off the bench so Millsap could get the touches in that area. I think he frankly was right with that idea from the very beginning, but it didn't work. And now you got to find a way with Paul and Al starting of how you're going to get that same phenomena to take place somewhere along the line. So a lot of things, and then the other question I'm getting a lot on tip-off is Gordon Hayward. Why wasn't he in the game late? And I don't know. Okay? I would again say, sure. I don't disagree with it. So let's try to back up. The thought process, I think, is that Gordon offensively does not have the one-on-one ability that you're getting out of CJ or Josh, and Ty wanted to keep guys in there who can make plays. CJ did make a nice one-on-one play and score. And this kind of gets into, I think I shared with you, Sidney Lowe and I had an extended conversation on the plane about kind of who we are and what we're doing. And the coaches are absolutely right on one sense that they're saying, hey, we need to push the ball offensively because when we get in the half-court set, we just don't have that many high-efficiency guys to be able to beat people in the half-court set, so we need to get those early opportunities. And so what happens late in the game is they're getting caught in the half-court set. You're going to be half-court set against the number 2 field goal percentage defense in the league in Indiana, so you want some guys that can make one-on-one plays. I agree. That's right. But then I wonder whether or not we should just try to be a defensive team. Now, let's just put our 5 best defenders out there and see if we can be a better defensive team than we are. And so while maybe we will slip offensively and struggle, but we will end up being a better offensive team, or defensive team, more so than we become a less good defensive team, if that makes sense. But these are all things, we're working with through the team. If we pull back for a second, final thought. Sorry, this is getting really long. Final thought is, at the beginning of the year, I built a program to see if we could win 33 games. We're still on pace for that, and I don't think anybody in the world should have thought we could ever be anything more than 500 this year. That's going to be hard. There's going to be fatigue and a lot of issues. But, frankly, in New York and in Indiana weren't games we expected to win. It would have been nice, and you would have thought that the New York game with the injuries they had you could have taken, and to battle Indiana the way we did was an awfully good sign. There aren't a lot of wins. At New Orleans, we got to go find a way to grab. There aren't a lot of wins left on the schedule. At Minnesota, probably before All-Star break, we got to grab. There are not a lot of wins here for a little while, and then there are some that we've got to go grab when we come back from All-Star break. But the key is going to be in that stretch of the game the other night where things went sour and we regressed back to all of our worst habits. The body language left and things of that nature. We got to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, this is getting way too long. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. I'll be back tomorrow morning. See you.